All right, so today we are presenting. So you want to be a consultant. And to the question that we got during the happy hour, we're defining consultant in this case as someone that is implementing Dynamics projects for clients. So normally either working as an independent contractor or working for one of the Microsoft partners that are out there. And apparently we have a lot of people that are already doing it. So I'm hoping that you guys will chime in and give us your thoughts and for those that are looking to do this. And so today we will be talking about the life of the consultant that is doing implementations. So we'll talk about a day in the life, types of roles that are out there, the skills needed. We'll talk next steps, and then we'll have some Q&A time at the end. So welcome. Thank you all for attending and thank you for having me. Kylie and I worked together at Hitachi and she was looking for victims, I guess. So that's what brought me into the group. And I'm happy to talk about my job. So, that's what we're going to do today. A little bit about me. I am a solution architect at Hitachi Solutions. I am currently, my day to day, I'm working on two projects simultaneously. One is in healthcare and the other is in insurance. I have been working with Dynamics for about 10 or so years now. I love training and helping clients build better processes. I really like getting in. I've learned so much from the clients about what they do and helping them come up with a better solution, move to a better solution, desk to spreadsheets, So helping them get to that point where they're utilizing newer technology, if not the latest and greatest, is, really what I like about the job. And I like the variety of it and, working closely with clients. So yeah, that's the best part of my job, getting to know a client and helping them solve their pain points. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host. I think Kylie is next, so she'll talk about her role, and then we'll hear from Malcolm.
Thanks, Kanika. So I am also a solution architect at Hitachi, and I've been there just under a year now. And at the time I wrote this slide, I was only on one project. I'm on two kind of projects right now. And on both of those, I'm working with a team of other architects and consultants, so definitely not doing it alone. And I'm really new to consulting. So prior to this, I always worked on client projects. So I'm one of those people who made the jump from the end user side into kind of the consulting space. And I've really been enjoying it so far because I just get exposure to so many more business challenges and things that we want to work on and build, and getting to use the latest and greatest technology. And it's just been really exciting so far. I also have a focus on internal training as well, which is something I'm excited about because I can continue to train kind of this next generation of consultants. So especially as we're talking about, people jumping over, career switching to consulting, or just joining, and we want to make sure that they're up to whatever our standards are, then it's really important to make sure we're doing training and we're getting people up to speed and we have the resources for them. So I'm excited to be involved in that. And then of course, I'm also running chapter events. So I think a day in the life, when we talk about that, involves, it kind of varies day to day, which I think is expected. And I think that's good. There are obviously a lot of meetings, but those can be kind of different types of meetings, whether they're running workshops or just getting requirements, or with a lot of the clients that I've been working with, we have working sessions, right? So we're working together as one team. So very similar to what I was doing as an end user, just instead of working in the same building as them, I work somewhere else, right? And so I think that's really good. And I think that we kind of want that, right? You want those collaborative relationships and you want to be working together on those things. So yeah, so that's what I like so far. Malcolm, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Malcolm McAuley. I was roped in, or I agreed to join us here by Kylie. Kylie's really exceptionally skilled at voluntelling people. And so she reached out to me one day and said, hey, we're doing this presentation on September the 8th. And And jokes aside, it actually was a great fit because prior to my current role as a consultant, I have worked for 10 plus years using and managing Dynamics and some of the Power Platform and some of the different products that have been evolving over the years at the customer end, and have always kind of wondered what it would be like on the consultant side. And so finally in 2020 decided, maybe I'll try and brush up on some of my skills and see if I can't convince somebody to give me a shot and hire me. And it's been a cool experience. So I'm excited to talk about it today. Like Kylie, when we first put this slide deck together, I actually edited this like 15 minutes before I joined the call because I was same on one project. I'm now on one main project in the Microsoft 365 space, which is, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about why that would be if I'm a Dynamics consultant, why I'm dabbling there. I'm now an owner of a portal proof of concept project, which is super exciting, and then a couple of support style. So we offer like block of hours type projects and support projects. So I've got a couple of clients that have reached out and are in need of sort of an extension of their own team, if you will. And so at C5 Insight, we have a couple of options for customers to take, and so I'll be supporting them. So it's interesting to me that, we went through this, I don't want to call it a lull because we had other projects and things going on, but all of a sudden it changed. The landscape of our projects changed very, very quickly in the span of probably a week and a half. All of a sudden we had all this extra stuff coming at us and things to do. And our days look very different today than they did all of 3 weeks ago, which is something I really enjoy on this side of things, because prior to coming into a consulting role, it was always about the fires that were coming up and being frontline at the, the Dynamics admin or the Power Platform admin. It was like, this thing is broken or this thing's not working. So it's been exciting to see that evolution take place, because I kind of, frankly, I was a little sick of the dealing with different fires and different things that came up every day. So I'm going to lead us into the next part, and we're going to start this conversation just to kind of highlight the question that came up in the chat earlier around, what do you define as a consultant, is a really great one, because there are a ton of different roles available. And somebody mentioned, I think, Craig, I think it was you, said, well, it's a great time to be in the market for a role. While we were talking about this presentation, we did a quick search just via LinkedIn to look at how many consultant roles in the Dynamics and Power Platform sort of sphere are there worldwide. There was roughly 60,000 different positions that were listed there, which blows me away. I can't even fathom how that could be. But as we hear, you hear it from Microsoft and you hear other customers talking about the evolution and how they're using the platform. When you start to look at that, there's a pretty vast breadth of use of this technology. So when you think about that, it does make sense that there could be that many different avenues and possible ways to use the platform, which would ultimately generate jobs. If we go down a slide, you'll see some of the key different types of positions and roles that exist. And so to your point, to the question, right, what do you define as a consultant? It's all of these things and probably more, right? There's probably a lot of other titles that you could throw at this, but the context that we're taking, as Kanika mentioned, is we're implementing Dynamics 365 or Microsoft even 365 projects and products for companies, really in the context of supporting them to best leverage the benefits of those tools and find efficiencies and operational efficiencies and consolidate of data and here to the death of spreadsheets, right? We're sick of dealing with spreadsheets all over the place. I cringe every time I hear customers say, well, we send out an email with a document and ask everybody to make their changes and send it back, and then I spend a half a day consolidating it. Those days are long gone. And so as a consultant, I think it's really cool to be in a position to help customers realize that they don't have to do it the way that it's always been done. There are new tools and new platforms available that they can make use of. I'm going to stop talking in just a minute, but what we're going to do is tell you a little bit about our own journeys and how we came to be a consultant. And I kind of already did that a little bit for you. As I mentioned, I was 10 years plus using as a Dynamics CRM, started in 4.0 and worked through multiple iterations and version updates, worked for a couple of different companies in that role, and always kind of found it really interesting working with the partners that we had. Frankly, some of them were awful. They weren't very supportive. They weren't very helpful. They gave us mediocre advice at best, or they'd give us advice and we'd kind of push back, and they didn't like that. And I always thought, there's got to be a better way, maybe is one way to phrase it. And I wonder if, not to say that I would necessarily be any better, but I'm learning from these interactions of all the things that the customer would probably value and the things that they really don't value. And I think that would be useful experience to bring into the role. And so, as I said earlier, 2020, crazy year for all of us. And so as the year rolled on, I thought it would be really cool if I could take this opportunity, because there was lots of openings all over the place. Now might be a good time to start looking in this sphere. And so I was thankful to get the role, and it's been a fantastic journey to date. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the kind of nuances and differences in different kinds of companies, but maybe I'll hand it over to you, Kylie, to talk a little bit about your journey and your experience.
Yeah, sure. I think so. When I started doing Power Platform stuff, I kind of came in on, like we said, the end user side, and came in more project management focused, and kind of thought that I just wanted to be a general project manager, and kind of fell into the consulting, or fell into the dynamics portion of it back when it was still called CRM. And then from learning about that and kind of gaining those skills, I moved into more of a business analyst role, support role, which then developed into a product owner role at that company, right? Which was for that company, as we were growing our dynamics footprint and growing our knowledge of the product. And then we had more opportunity for more specialized roles and things like that. And I think a lot of the things that you're doing in business analysis or in as a product owner, those are things that just are natural skills, right? That make sense in a lot of these kind of consulting roles that we're talking about, right? Analyzing requirements, documenting business processes, and prioritizing our features, things like that are all things that we're going to kind of talk about in our next section as well. And so because of the work that I was doing as a product owner, then I came over to Hitachi as a solution architect. But something that I've been really interested in since starting at Hitachi is all these different roles that are available that I didn't really know, right? You kind of think, oh, you hire a consultant and they do consulting, whatever that means. But we don't really think about how there are people that specialize in all these different areas. So when the three of us were building out this little word cloud here, we're just kind of rattling off the top of our head different ideas, right? We could have our architects, we could have you could be a Power Platform architect or a Dynamics architect, but you could also just be a consultant or a project manager or a Scrum Master. And all these things are roles that you could have on the consulting side or on the end user side. So I think that those are a lot of skills that you can be learning now. If you're not in the consulting area, you could be learning more about Agile. You could be learning about being a Scrum Master, taking those certifications and things like that. And that could prepare you for a role when you get over to the consulting side. And I think something else that was interesting as we were kind of talking and planning this out is also the difference between kind of Malcolm's journey and Kanika and I at different size partners, right? So we might have someone at a larger partner that is specialized in things, maybe someone who's specialized in data analytics or something like that. Whereas in different smaller partners, they might not be as specialized. They might have more, have people who are doing more across all areas, and not saying that either side has more knowledge or is more experienced or anything like that. It's just kind of a different lay of the land. And so if you're looking for being able to dabble in a little bit of different areas, then that might be something to consider. But also know that even if you were at a larger partner, that doesn't mean you're stuck in one lane, right? You can always move around or find what's best for you. Kanika, you want to talk a little bit about your journey and kind of your thoughts on this stuff?
Sure. So when I started out in Dynamics, and back then it was called CRM as well. I was actually working technical support for an add-on, an ISV product, and I would talk to consultants and architects all the time, and I thought that what they were doing was really cool because as someone on the support side of things, people only call you when there's a problem. They only call you when they're angry and they're frustrated and they need help. But these people I saw were working from the beginning. They were working with the happy customers. And so I was really intrigued by that. And so I decided that that was going to be the path that I was going to take. I was going to try to make that jump and get on with a partner. And so I had applied at I did my research and applied at all the partners that I could. And it wasn't as remote as it is now. So I had to really, I'm in Atlanta, so I had to really apply for local positions. And, as soon as they found out that I did not have any implementation experience, they pretty much showed me the door. But I was able to get on with the local Atlanta firm. And the nice thing about them is that they hired people right out of college. And so they had this training program to train up new consultants, and they came in as associates. And so because I had Dynamics experience, they were able to bring me on, and they kind of sent me through the consulting 101 training. So I was actually able to learn how to be a consultant through that program. And it was a smaller firm. We maybe had maybe 40 people. So turns out the next year, after I'd gone through the consulting training, the next year I was actually the CRM instructor. And I was training that next class of students coming in, or graduates coming in rather. And so I pointed out to them, I was like, well, I hope you guys pay attention, learn a lot, because you'll probably be in the same position next year where you're training the next class. And that's the beauty of, kind of working at a smaller firm where you get to wear more hats. So that's how I started out. And I've been at Hitachi almost 4 years, and I made the leap from small consulting firm to larger one. And so I can speak to both sides of the experience, and we've got a slide on that, so we can talk about that a little bit later. But that's been my journey. And just speaking to what we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of opportunity out there. So if you're on the fence about it and you're thinking about it, you might want to give it a try. Just go ahead and do it. Brush up your skills and get out there and do it, because no 2 days are the same. We're doing different things. We're working on projects and things like that. But as you heard from the other two, things have changed even since we started, you know, planning this presentation. I'm still on my two projects, but that's actually going to change in a couple weeks. And I'm looking forward to that, new project, new company, new people to work with and all of that. So lots of opportunity out there. And I'm happy to talk to anybody further about any changes that they want to make or anything like that. So yeah, I guess we want to move on to the next slide.
Yeah, and I think that you were giving a great intro to this around, what skills do we need and what should you be brushing up on probably before your interview, and what do you want to be working on. So let's talk a little bit about what to brush up on before your interview. One thing I think that is important is to know your strengths, right? All of us have skills and things that we're bringing to the table. And I think it's important to be able to articulate those and present them in a confident manner, right? If you're going into an interview, you're not going to be sitting there talking about all your flaws or shortchanging yourself, right? Like, you want to be able to speak confidently about your skills and about what you know and what you think that you will be bringing to this company, right? And so in some cases, that is going to be your technology knowledge, right? So like Kanika, she already knew Dynamics, and you can bring that to the table and say, yeah, I haven't implemented for a customer, but I know Dynamics and I know it inside and out, and I can do all this support. And that can be a really big selling point. But you could also be looking at maybe industry focused. Maybe you aren't as up to speed on the technology, but you do have specialized knowledge in a certain industry. And there's a lot of industries that they're booming right now, and there's lots of growth, and it's hard to bring in a consultant and get them up to speed on that whole industry, basically overnight. They might know the technology, but maybe they don't know they don't know the industry, and so then they're going to end up delivering a subpar solution. So I think it's important to know that that can be a driver too, and be ready to sell that and kind of justify that to whoever you're talking to in the interview or kind of on your resume.
Definitely. And I just want to second what Kylie is saying. Industry focus is a strong selling point. Even if you're not as strong as on the technology end, if you have a deep industry knowledge, especially healthcare, insurance, manufacturing, play that up as a strength, because we definitely need people with those skill sets.
Yeah. And as we kind of said in the introduction, we like all of these consultants, not just us, but so many of these partners have so much work to do and not enough people to do it, right? So now is a great time to get involved. And if you have strengths on any of those areas, we will help you find someone who is looking for you, right? Malcolm, you want to talk a little bit about our middle box there?
Yeah, the middle pillar, if you will. So that power platform. So understand, how you could use the platform, and so that's a really important one, because it's overwhelming, right, to say the least. There's been new stuff released on some of these platforms from the time we started this recording, I have no doubt, right? And it's always changing and constantly evolving and coming out with new features. So you want to understand what you could be doing with the platform, but that doesn't necessarily know you have to know every nook and cranny and every feature and function. One of the things I think all of us here love about the community as a whole is that there's a wealth of information available. And so even if you just set aside some time once a week to brush up on some of the latest blogs, or watch some of the videos, and watch some of the videos from community members. I love the Microsoft content and it's great. And I would say watch, the docs and the learn and pay attention to all that. But look through the community offerings too, because there's all kinds of stuff that you can get a glimpse of to help you understand what the capabilities are. And that's been a big learning curve for me in terms of what's part of the consultant role. Is it's not necessarily knowing the nitty-gritty of how to do something, it's knowing what you could do. It's the art of the possible, right? And so knowing, hey, we could use a portal to do that, and you'll need to know how to talk about what to do and how to do it, but you will also have some grace in terms of, okay, great, we're going to do that, let's dig in and figure it out. And you're going to have bumps just like you do in your day-to-day. Now there's going to be things where you're like, oh shoot, I didn't know that that Power Automate was going to throw that curveball at me, and I got to figure that out. But you have grace to figure that out, but you need to understand what the capabilities are, what the potentials are. And so that's all about knowing the technology, right? That second point there is knowing the technology you're working with, understanding what its capabilities are, understanding what its limitations are. And so I think that's a really important one to underscore, that you want to understand all the great things you can do, but you don't want to oversell, right? You don't want to say it can do something that it actually can't do. Generally speaking, you can pretty much make it do whatever you want. You get a skilled developer in there. You can do pretty much everything with these platforms, but there are customers who are going to say, look, we don't want any custom. We want it all out of the box. Show us what you can do with the out of the box features and functions. So you need to have a good understanding of that. I think it was Richard and Craig both commented as in the opening remarks or early on in the happy hour portion. Richard, you mentioned about having to wear multiple hats, right, in your current role, and that's a big thing. I think we actually dropped this slide about large and small, but the one of the things that I've come to learn, we're a smaller firm here at C5 Insight, and so that means that there are times when we have projects where I mentioned earlier I'm dabbling with some Microsoft 365, so SharePoint, Teams, and some of those platforms and functions that are available there. And that's a whole huge learning curve for me personally. But as you spend some time in that, it all follows very similar methodology, and what they're trying to do underneath all of these platforms is really what Microsoft's mandate is, right? Is to make everybody more efficient and more effective in their day-to-day job. And so knowing that the tools are there to do that, it's just finding the right mix of the technology that's going to benefit the customer and meet them where they're at, and then take them beyond, right? While they're currently sending documents around, well, let's bring some versioning control to that and put it all in Teams so that you can have some interaction. And now your document's all in one place where everybody's interacting, and you have one document that has all the versions that you need. That kind of functionality, again, understanding what the capabilities are is really, really important. And then Craig, you talked about having the various specialties, right? There's all these different specialties, and that's one thing, not just within our own team, but leveraging things like this at the community, right? Reaching out to other members of the community and saying, hey, I'm stuck. I don't know. I actually just had a call this afternoon where we did this very situation. We were up against a bump that we couldn't solve because there was something funky going on, and we reached out. We phoned a friend, and they came in and helped us get our head around it, and away we go. And that's one of the things that, again, all of us here on this call understand this community brings forward, is the ability to reach out to each other and say, hey guys, I'm stuck. I need some help. And so that's a huge part of it as well. Kanika, I think you were going to touch on some of the soft skills that are required.
Yes. So I think two of the biggest soft skills that you can bring to the table, and you'll probably be asked about, are conveying technical info into easily digestible parts. So being able to translate both from the business side, the functional side, to the developer side. I'm kind of that bridge between the developers and the customer, and making sure that I translate each person's thoughts into the other. So talking to my customer and understanding what they're trying to do, what their goals are, and then translating that into what we're going to build and present to them is very important. So, that's wearing the business analyst hat and just understanding the customer's business and their processes and all that good stuff. And then also being able to work with multiple levels of an organization, being able to talk to both CEOs and the people working on the help desk, because generally, your help desk workers are going to be the ones with hands on the system, and they need certain things. Your C-level executives want to know what this is going to cost, what kind of value, what kind of ROI they're going to get on this implementation. And so just being able to relate to all those different levels of an organization is also important. So those were, I think, a couple of the soft skills that I think are really important and that you can highlight in your interview. So, and I'd love to hear from anybody else that has any other soft skills that they'd want to make sure that people have as well.
I love that. I think that translation piece that you talked about is so key. I think so often we have people on a call and they're saying the same thing, but they don't mean the same thing. And we have to be able to listen and say, okay, wait a minute, you're saying this and you're saying this, and those two are not the same. And it's, I think that's such a great item. And I think a lot of this comes down to, meeting management, people management, and things like that. So I think on our next slide here, we wanted to talk about what are some of the skills that you need for a consultant. And we talked through a lot of these, and these are probably just the tip of the iceberg. But one of the ones that the group of us spend a lot of time talking about too is the kind of business process analysis. So whatever consulting role you're in, there's going to be some bit where you're going to be documenting a process and finding how it can be improved and things like that. And we also kind of talked about some places might have a bad process that we're improving, but some places might have no process at all, that we need to kind of fully figure out what that process should be and work out the change management to get people onto that process and get people following a new process, which is can be a pretty big undertaking, especially depending on how that organization responds to change and responds to new processes and things like that, and how complicated that process becomes. Malcolm and Kanika, what are your favorite skills on this slide or other ones that we talked about?
So for me, training is always going to be probably my number one. I really do like getting in and understanding the processes and saying, well, could you do this better? How can we do this in the future? And going from there. But really, I like to get in and show clients the product, walk them along. I love to see them have that aha moment. It's like, okay, this is going to save me an hour on my job, or this is going to make my job so much easier. And, just understanding meeting them where they are and helping them learn the new system and use it, and, explaining that, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just do this, and, 2 clicks and you're done. That's the biggest thing for me, but all of these come into play. Kylie mentioned communication and asking questions, and change management. Change management is huge. That's where your user adoption comes in. I also wanted to point out too, Jamie put a good point in the chat about storytelling. And storytelling is a big piece of a lot of what we do. If you can tell a customer a good story and get them on board, telling them how things could work in the future, or just kind of telling them about another customer's experience. Because I have customers ask all the time, well, have you done anything like this for another customer? What are other customers doing out there? How can we get this to work? What have you seen? So good stories are always good for that, and relating those other experiences that you have to that current customer are very beneficial. So, and I'll turn it over to Malcolm so that he can speak as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that both of you said. I think the one that jumps out at me the most on this, and it did when we first put this all together, was that asking questions one. And I think I gravitate to that one because it's kind of a twofold. When you ask people questions, everybody loves talking about themselves, whether it's their own stuff and I don't mean that in everybody's a conceited person who wants to talk about. But what I mean is, when you're asking questions and you're showing genuine interest, people appreciate that. And I think it rings true in this industry or this world of consulting as well. When we're meeting with a customer and we're asking them, help us understand your process. Help us understand why it's that way. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you guys do? Oh, that's really cool. Tell us more about this or that. I think customers feel there's an element of flattery there. They're like, wow, you really want to understand what we're trying to do. And that goes a long way in building a rapport with the customer, but it also goes even longer in helping you understand what it is that's going on, right? And I think somebody mentioned it earlier, Kanika, I think you said, one of you said that they don't always know what they're asking for, and they don't always understand or know what the possibilities are. So their context for, well, we want Dynamics to do this, is inside of the box based on their current understanding of what they do with Dynamics. And so how do you break them out of that? And I think a big part of that is asking questions. And I hear here to the storytelling, because if you can help them understand what it could look like and what that storyline looks like, that's going to go a long way in helping them break out of that box and visualize where they could go with the platform, what they could do. And can you get to your point, that light bulb moment, right? If you can give them that light bulb moment and say, look, if we did it this way and build in this automation here with Power Automate, we're going to save you X per month. That's a huge light bulb. Everybody wants more time. So if we can help them find that more time, that's a win. We were going to talk a bit about, unless anybody had something to add, including the audience. If you guys, those of you, I saw a few people liking that comment about storytelling. Anybody want to chime in and kind of expand on that?
I mean, it was my comment, so I'll just say thanks for to the shout out. And everything has been said already, I think. But yeah, storytelling for me personally, the best way to convey information just to anyone is through a good story. Because just putting facts on a screen or just showing them a demonstration, it doesn't work usually. Instead, what really works is saying, okay, here's the story. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the thing that this thing is going to solve for you. And having a beginning, middle, and end, and showing them the vision, like you said, of what's possible, I think is so key. No matter what scale you're working at, whether it's making a small change to an existing system or making a dramatic change. So a good story helps.
Yeah, well said. Well
And I
said,
think
Kelly.
that's true
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's true from both sides, right? I think we want to tell a story, but we could also want to encourage our clients to tell us their story and help us really understand their motivation. Like, don't just show us a business process, show us why they're doing that. And you have Bob, the salesperson, who we want to do this, and because that drives these other things. And I think a lot of these also relate down to something, I guess, kind of goes back to asking questions, but also being detail oriented around what our requirements actually are, not just the solution, right? So like Malcolm said, they might just want a field, but really we could say, is that what you want? Or what are you actually trying to get? How do we build the solution for you based on what you really want, not based on what you think you want, right? Which I think is really hard, because especially as we know the technology, it's very easy to start solutioning in your head, or as your clients start to learn the solution more, then they're going to start to say, oh yeah, so in your world, that means da 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 da, we'll do this. And then you go ahead and build it. And then 2 weeks later, they ask for something in reporting that you can't give them, or they ask for, some additional automation that we can't do because of a decision that was kind of made on the fly without digging in, right? And so I think that all of these skills kind of go together and relate back to that. But yeah. Anything else to add, anyone?
No, but I get the sense you're speaking from experience on the whole. We did one thing and then a week later they changed their minds.
Oh, every day of my life, every day. So I think our next thing is we wanted to call out some next steps and where do you want to go from here? So Kanika, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So I think we decided that one thing that you want to do, and we talked about this, is that you want to make sure you brush up on your skills or gain some new skills. There's lots of resources. And I think on the next slide, Kylie, yeah. So staying up to date, going to the Microsoft Learn site, using social media, forums, blogs, and obviously this group, because there's a lot. I can tell, this is my first time being here, but I can tell there's a lot of deep knowledge in this group. So use your resources. And as Jamie, I think that was Jamie that said, also use the group for networking, since we are all working at different places and things like that, and you're looking to get a foot in the door, use the people that you have surrounding you for that. Start talking to people and getting the word out there that this is what you want to do. Let's go to the next slide. And so we came up with a few next steps that we wanted to put out there for the group. Narrow down your focus, decide look at some job descriptions and decide what you think you may want to do at your next position, based on the information that you have today. Assess your skills. You may need to get someone to help you do that, but look at what you're working with and see how you can improve that, or what you may need to do to get your skills up to par. And again, leverage your connections, connect with us. Certainly I'm on LinkedIn, so anybody wants to connect, you have questions or anything like that, certainly reach out to me and I can talk to you about working for a large consulting firm, kind of what my day in the life looks like. Brush up on your technical skills and don't be afraid to apply, because, like we were saying, there's a dire need and a lot of companies are relaxing their requirements. One thing that I want to point out for the women on the call, it's been shown that women will only apply for positions where they're 100% qualified for it. And men, the percentage is like 25% or something like that. So that's a big gap. So if you are looking at a position and you don't have 100% of the qualifications, apply anyway. I mean, you just never know. And that's my PSA for the women out there. And yeah. So anything that Kylie you want to add, or Malcolm?
I think related to that, I think I wanted to call out, as we wrote on here, when you're doing your critical assessment, it's helpful to get someone else to help, right? Because we always kind of naturally will say probably not our whole, we'll what's the word I'm looking for? We're not always good at selling ourselves, right? Because we're going to say, well, I helped with this, but did you really help? You were kind of leading that whole charge. You did a lot more than that. So it's really good to get someone else to review your skills. I know I can pick on Malcolm. I think both of us have reviewed each other's resumes and things like that on occasion. And it's so easy to, when someone else reads it who knows you or has worked with you, you can say, oh, you did more than that. Oh, this word is making it sound like not as much. Sounds like you were in the background when you might have been leading it, right? So I think it's really helpful, especially if you were not feeling ready. Just talk to somebody else who is in that position, or maybe knows you and has worked with you, because they might be able to talk you through and see where you really are, right? And really get a real assessment, not just your self-conscious assessment, if that makes sense.
And have fun with it. So Kylie and I actually did a thing last year where we were both interested in learning a couple of new things, and so we created like I don't know if I want to call it a storyline. What was it? Well, we created a fictitious example, and then we leveraged Microsoft's Power Platform and Dataverse and whatever they're calling it nowadays. We used those tools to kind of live out our example of running a baseball league. And that was a lot of fun. Like we learned some new stuff. We had some, good laughs about it all, and got to kind of put it in practice in a thing that made sense to us. And that was a really helpful exercise for me, anyways. That I think it was for you too, Kylie. But it was really cool to put it in the context of something that I actually was interested in. And since then, mind you, I haven't done anything since then, that point. But what I wanted to do after that for this summer was build it. Hey, let's build I want to build an app of some sort to help me manage my golf score. Nothing can help my golf score, let me assure you, but it would have been cool if I had a thing that I could have used to input my score as I went, and then push that data to Power BI and done some analysis on that data, pure just for fun. But it would have been a neat way to do that. Maybe I'll do it for next season. I didn't actually golf much this year, but anyways, just the point is make it fun, right? Take out a trial, play around with it a little bit, just get familiar with it, and that helps you kind of build those skills and understand what's going on. And as I talked about earlier, just understanding what's even the potential of the platform. Never mind, what it's doing today, but what could it be doing tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot, and we learned a lot of things that we thought we knew that we didn't know, which is good, which is still good. It's still learning.
I didn't really want to say that, but okay, no.
Oh, too late. If they saw our blooper video, then they know.
Then they're well aware. That's right. And if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it, because it was pretty funny.
We thought it was. Anyways, I think that's all of the content we had for today. So we'll just open it up for questions. If there's anything else, or anyone that wants to share their journey with us, if they made the switch, or even if you were in consulting from the beginning, or if you're thinking to make the switch, what are you doing to prepare, and kind of that. And I'm going to also go ahead and put up our connection information while we do that. So any questions in the chat?
A lot of good comments back and forth.
There are a lot of good comments in the chat, but yeah, anybody want to come off mute and speak, feel free.
Well,
Congratulations, Aaron, for making the consulting jump.
yeah,
Hey.
congratulations. I'll share my story. Hopefully others will share theirs too. I got into consulting a little over 2 years ago. Um, I spent 13 years at the Discovery Channel. And there I started in one role and I sort of gradually worked my way up to the point where I became a technical trainer. And so that's, I think, Kanika mentioned training, and that's certainly a passion of mine because I spent over 10 years doing technical training. And it was in that role that I discovered SharePoint, and then that led me to Power Platform, which wasn't called Power Platform at that point. It was just Power Apps and Flow. And that got me into the community, and then that got me into my first consulting job. So I would just say, everyone has their own journey take, but if you're someone who's passionate about technology and you're passionate about helping people, consulting can be a really great opportunity. And as I think everyone on here has mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities right now, especially in the Power Platform space. But I'm happy to reach out to anybody if anybody has questions. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Encourage people to increase their network, get out there, meet people in a safe way. Obviously, we don't want to get sick, but virtually. There's lots of virtual events. This user group's one, but there's user groups pretty much every day of the week. So if you're looking to make connections, you can.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. And we have a great question in the chat from Monica. So I've seen a variation of skills required for solution architect roles. What is your recommendation on what to focus on? Kanika, you want to kick it off?
Yes, I can take that one. I think focus on the things that interest you. If you are thinking you want to learn Power Platform and, doing the low no code solutions and things like that, start there. If you are not as technical like me, I don't do any coding, whatsoever. I, write that up and pass that off to a developer. If that's the case for you, you can focus on functional architect. So that way you're dealing with clients and gathering requirements and doing more config than customization. There's also the data scientists out there. We have a data scientist team practice at Hitachi. So, if that's something of interest, you can do that. Training. We've also got a change management team. So if you really want to focus on helping organizations navigate their change and training and stuff like that, you could focus there. So pretty much my answer is whatever interests you, you can probably find something that will align with your interests and your skills. And I know that was probably not the best answer, but that's what I'm sticking with.
And you can even go as granular as like app specific. I've heard of, there are some companies that are hiring for a D365 sales solution architect, and that's all they do. They just hire that, and that's the resource that they pull into any project that they get for those kinds of projects. So and that's across the board. I've seen them for customer service and field service and all kinds of stuff. So if you have a specific domain that you really enjoy, you could hone in on that. It obviously probably narrows the number of jobs available if you're single app focused, but there are still opportunities out there for sure.
I've seen roles posted just as Power BI Analytics Architect. And Power BI Desktop is 100% free. Download it today, become an expert at it, and you've got yourself a career path. So it's all very accessible.
We had another question in the chat about being an independent consultant. Let's wait a few minutes on that one because I think Aiden will be back on in a few minutes and can really talk to that since that's what he does. We had one other question. Malcolm, what do you think was your biggest challenge or the hardest part of your transition from being a regular person to a fancy consultant?
It's a great question. I think the biggest challenge you asked?
Biggest challenge or the hardest part?
Tracking hours and billable time that's been an interesting learning curve for me, because it's a whole new world, right? How do how are you spending your time, and where are you spending your time, and what specific things are you doing with that time? That's been a learning curve. It's also been a little bit eye-opening. It's kind of weird. I know that every company does something different, and there's unique industries, and everything's a different focus. But jumping in and working with a customer that you didn't know, the day before even existed, and trying to understand what it is they do and how they do it and why they exist in this world and what they're trying to accomplish and how they're trying to help their customers, that has been, I don't know that challenging is the right word. It's been a lot of fun. I think it's probably one of the most enjoyable things, because I'm like, I had no idea that there was companies that created the thing that goes in fiberglass. Who knew? Like, had no idea. But there's a whole world there that I didn't, understand. And it's really neat to see that this is what this customer is doing. And when you boil it all down, it kind of boils down to like, hey, they're trying to keep track of their customers and understand who their good customers are and who their customers they haven't talked to in a while are. It doesn't matter what industry they're in. They're all kind of trying to do the same thing, but they're looking at it through a different lens. And that's been challenging, again, is probably not the right word, but it's been fascinating for sure.
Yeah, I think Aaron also touched on one of the similar things, time management, keeping track of your time and billing your time. Completely agree. That's a hurdle, but I agree with everything you said. We have an excellent question in the chat around people who have experience with Dynamics. They have all the transferable skills, but how do you get over that hurdle of haven't worked on a full implementation, or kind of similar things like you haven't been a consultant, so we don't want to hire you? And that is a great question. And I know I've been turned down even for interviews because I didn't have consulting experience. And I think there are a lot of people that's a concern. And I think, Kanika, I'll let you take this one. I think the only point I'll add now is like a lot of people are looking now. And so now's the time to try and make that jump. And I think a lot of it is around selling yourself and say, yes, I don't have that, but I know this and this and this, right? And be able to kind of talk to those points. Like, Kanika, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Just being able to say, yes, I have Dynamics experience. Yes, I have customer facing experience. I am willing to learn how to do an implementation. I understand Agile. Somebody had put in the chat, learning Agile. So learning, I think the terminology and being able to use that in the interviews, I think will be helpful for you. But it's rough out here trying to find bodies. So I think people are being a lot more flexible just because we need the bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So keep trying, keep plugging away at it, and just see what you can do in terms of networking and people that and because if you can refer somebody and kind of get them in the door, that's a good thing too. So keep plugging away at it. You have to kind of be persistent like I was, but you can do it. And like I said, there's a lot of opportunity out there.
If you have the tech skills, but you don't necessarily have implementations experience, probably a good place to look would be the larger firms, because they'll have plenty of experienced people. What they don't have is enough people familiar with the tech. So I work for a large company, Accenture, that hundreds of thousands of people, right? I sit in tech interviews, dozens a week. I have never turned someone away because they had not worked on an implementation. It usually boils down to their skill sets, and then the people that will be leading those teams have plenty of experience working on implementation. So it's a great way for you to start getting exposed to that. You may not necessarily be hired as an architect or a team lead for one of those teams, but it at least gets you the access. And if you have the skill sets, you will not be turned away. There's such a demand for those people right now that I would love to have more people that fall into that category in these interviews I have to sit through.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you shouldn't be discouraged maybe if you don't get the role you want to, because I think a lot of times you might interview for, say, a solution architect, right? And they might offer you a consultant or scrum master or something like that. And I don't think that you should be discouraged by that either, right? Because this is a place to start and you can move around and find what you like and still adjust after that, so you have options in there. I think the important bit is finding a place you like and focusing on the company culture and that kind of stuff first, if that makes sense.
I see a couple of hands up, Bradley, and I'm trying to figure out who the other one is, but
Charles.
Oh, Charles. Did either of you guys want to jump off mute?
Yes, Brad. So, I just wanted to add too, don't forget, one thing, a lot of these companies, at least some of the more forward-thinking companies, they're not going to necessarily just be looking at what you've done or how many implementations you've done, at least on the consulting side. Not always. Sometimes if they've got the right staff to kind of pair you up, they'll be looking at your capacity as well. So, I wouldn't rule out other experiences that you have. I think that came up early in the conversation. Some of the experiences you had, I've been all over the place. I started out as a DBA, working for Bank of America. I worked for Nextel in communications. I've been a federal employee. I'm with Microsoft. I had a consulting couple jobs in the middle. And I very much play on the fact that all of those multiple types of experiences, the catch is I've only really been in federal since I've been, not really. I guess I started out on the commercial side, but majority of my time, which has been a long time in Dynamics, started out in the commercial side, but most of my time has been on the federal side. So, play into your federal experiences if you're looking at organizations that are also looking for federal resources too. If you have a federal background or you've had federal implementation, that's a whole different world than the commercial side of things. But just remember, they're going to hire you also for your capacity, and your capacity is not limited to what you've been doing necessarily over the last 6 months. Think of a way to tie in the things that you've been doing through time and how that could actually help that organization move forward as well.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Good point.
I think Brad couldn't possibly be more right. It's a bigger picture, right, than your implementations. And if you're getting turned down for interviews because of a lack of implementation experience, and you're just looking at the wrong companies, flat out, right? Like if they're not ready to talk to you just because you don't have a full implementation, then they're not the right place for you. There's a lot of, with respect to our Hitachi friends here and Hitachi and Accenture friends, there's also a lot of mid-size. There's also a lot of small companies. There's a huge number of companies out there that compete in this space that offer an enormous number of roles. If you're here in the DC area, for example, what a great way to find a job instantly is? Watch the federal procurement websites. Watch those. Wait for somebody to make a big win for a BizApp sale or an Azure sale or something like that. Somebody just won a $50 million contract at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission or something like that. You find that company and you say, right after they made that win or 2 months after they made that win, hey, by the way, I have some relevant skills you might be interested in. Sure, I've never had a full implementation, but you're going to have a big team that can support me while I get those skills. In the meantime, I can offer you relevant skills in the space of energy, compliance, and whatever it is, whatever that space is. And that's guaranteed to get you a role. There's just no missing on that one. Whatever that company is, they need to scale up for that big win. And you hit them at the right time and they'll take it for sure.
That's a great point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the one question we had in the chat a little bit earlier, Aiden, that you could probably tackle a little bit was just around any tips for people who are thinking about becoming an independent consultant. How do you find clients? How do you get started with that? And what should they be aware of before they jump in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. If anyone has more questions or wants to chat, hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. I'm happy to talk about it all day. Yeah, so it was very timely. I was just chatting with somebody before this meeting who today was their, or I guess last week was their last day at their company because they're going independent as well. Yeah, it's freaking terrifying at first, and it's really overwhelming, to be honest. So I started my company kind of I was kind of forced to. I saw a post online that said, hourly gig, X dollars an hour. And it was with one of these it was with Nigel Frank. And the way that they do their pay is like corp to corp. So, they'll I think Charles said something about like a 1099, like a lot of companies will bring you on that way. And they'll do that, but you have to have your own company with insurance and all this other stuff. I didn't realize I had to start my own company. I just kind of wanted to do the work, right? I was a developer, so that was where I was comfortable, and so I was kind of forced to start my own company, and to do this contract, and just the amount of work that goes into it, and the amount of stuff you're forced to learn, it's insane. Like it's a wonder that anybody can organize a business. And like, yeah, you can do like sole proprietor, 1099, just like I'm aiding the dev, just write me a check. But but the problem that you'll have with that is around liability, because you have no protection then. I've never had a problem. I've been on my own for about 5 years, and I've never had anything close to a problem. But potentially, if the project goes crazy and the company wants to sue you, then that's you personally, not the company representing you. So that's a so that was something that really caught me off guard, is how much stuff surrounding your actual work you need to do and be responsible for. Finding work, I think I was kind of following along the chat while I was out. But yeah, mostly through events like this, at presenting at different events. It's people I've worked with at other jobs. I mean, Charles has given me tips that help me get work. Other people here have directly referred me for other things. So, a lot of it's just from knowing people and being available when they need something. One of the strengths that we have as independent, and it's kind of it's a drawback on a personal level, but a strength professionally, is that we're able to be responsive, as responsive as you want to be. So, if you're at a large company, they might have a support team, but it could take a week or 2 weeks or a month to get the problem fixed for the client. And, what I strive for is to fix things very quickly. Obviously, give good support for my clients. And then, even if it starts out as like a small project, it might be nothing after that, but it could also be, more and more and more over time, to the point where it's, maybe a small amount of consistent work. But then you do that with a few clients, and then you get a big project that you're working on, and it ends up being a pretty good handful. The drawback, of course, is that you are responsible for you're responsible for getting that work. So like you're doing your own sales. So I've done a lot of direct work for clients. I've also done subcontracting for partners. So kind of like Charles was talking about, that's where that's my bread and butter. And then I do kind of work with smaller clients to top off that. So, the drawback is, I tell you, the first contract I was on for about 3 years or 3.5 years, and it was great. I loved the project, and it came up for a recompete. So they're like, yeah, we got it in the bag. Nobody's even close to us. And then we lost it. So found out on very short notice that I didn't have a job. Joined another contract with another partner, and this was, this massive project, kind of same situation, right? Massive project. Everybody on the partner was like, yeah, they love us. Everything's going great. We'll be here for years. And within a few months, it turns out the client didn't didn't love them quite as much as they thought. They just canceled the project. Everybody on the project was out of a job. So, and so after that, it was about 6 weeks where I didn't have a full-time job. So it's like, it's very much feast or famine. Hopefully you're feasting more, but kind of having that knowledge that there's not always guaranteed work can either be very motivating or terrifying, depending on how you want to say it. But yeah, I mean, as far as getting that work, usually, word of mouth, or, when I had that drop in work, I just kind of reached out to everybody, LinkedIn, and emailing people I knew or people I'd worked with, seeing if they knew, new partners that needed work. And I ended up getting another thing, again, like Charles said, it was a company that had a massive Dynamics project that recently took it on. They needed to staff up. They didn't have senior resources, and it ended up working out well for me. I'm really happy with this team now, but it's obviously nothing's guaranteed, but nothing's guaranteed with your employer either. They might miss a sale that they were expecting, you have to lay off a couple of people. So, at least you kind of have more direct control over things. Sorry, I kind of rambled on a lot there. Does anyone have any specific questions, or want me to talk more about anything that I'd said?
I think that was really helpful. I think that definitely answered the question, and so appreciate it. I'm just looking back at
Hey, Kylie,
Go ahead.
while you're searching, has this been covered about asking the right questions if you do want to get into consulting?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say, get a list. You need to get a list of the types of questions that you want to ask that organization. What sparked that is something Aiden said in regards to, companies who are saying that, the client loves us to death. We'll be here another 20 years. Ask those questions. You need to understand what those questions, and you need to not just hear the answers, but watch the answers if you can, see how they're responding. You need to understand how long their contracts are. You need to understand if they have a bench, if that contract were to go away. A lot of the smaller companies are not going to have a bench, or if they do, you need to understand how long that bench is. And by bench, I mean, how long will you still be employed if they lose that contract that they hired you for? Some of the larger companies have longer benches, but even some of the larger companies may not have anything longer than, a few weeks. You want to understand what their relationship is with the customer. What is their leadership that's in place? Are you a sole consultant or a team of 2 or 3 people? Is there a program manager involved that fields all of that type of work, that direct contact with the customer? Themselves, and by program manager, I mean, are you also responsible for the relationship? You're not just doing the consulting work, but you're also the primary lead. That'll give you an idea of the size of the contract. They won't tell you the size, but an idea of the size of their commitment to the company, or where they're at in terms of the scope of the project itself. It's all things you obviously want to know. I mean, I've had friends who've taken contracts, in a similar capacity, I think, to what Aiden was alluding to, and they didn't tell you that they were on their way out the door because they still want to be able to bill for a couple more months, but they know that they're on the chopping block. You don't want to get stuck in that, obviously. So I think just having a good, solid set of questions is very important when you go into that world, especially if you're starting out and going into some of the smaller companies as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know back when I was interviewing, and if someone said, "Oh, we want to hire you for this specific contract," it always made me nervous, because I was like, what does that mean if something falls through, right? Which are great questions to ask. And I think that also fits in well. There was a question in the chat around someone who's nervous about talking with end users or talking with clients. So are there positions where you can work as a team member or more independently without needing to participate in meetings or presentations? And I think Jamie answered that a little bit, that's definitely possible. And I think that goes back to some of the questions that Brad is saying to ask on your interview. I know there are definitely people on my projects that have less client interactions, right? Because we are going to have other people who are determining the requirements and determining what the solution will entail. And then we kind of will document all that information and send it over to a consultant or whoever who's actually going to implement the work. And so that person implementing it might be on some of those calls, but might not be necessarily engaging with the client, and they're just kind of doing the work. But then it kind of varies project to project. So there's a lot of different options there. Did anyone have anything to add on that question? Oh, I see Aiden's comment. You need to be a developer if you don't want to talk to people.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on that. Yeah, you need to be a developer on that if you wanted to have that sort of situation, and it's possible. It's kind of rare, but it's possible.
And it won't get you to the senior most ranks.
Right. Yeah.
Well, even a developer who doesn't want to talk to people ain't gonna get past mid to senior. It's just not gonna happen. You've got to deal with people in consulting. It's a full stop on that.
Right. I started as a developer, not especially enthusiastic about talking with the clients, just intimidated more than anything. But over time, you get more comfortable with it. I know that's not much of a help to get started, but you get more comfortable with it. But then you also have a much wider skill set, which makes you more attractive for more positions, and then more likely to find, not just the higher up positions, but just kind of a broader pool to choose from too.
And I'll just add that having a place like this or a small group that you can be part of and participate in can help you build those soft skills so you can talk to people. So I would say if you're uncomfortable, like you just don't like talking to people you don't know, coming and getting involved in a group like this can give you a safe space to do that where the stakes are really low. And you can work on those skills, maybe do a short presentation or something like that, just to kind of loosen you up and get you thinking about how you can present and talk to a client.
Cool. I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover and more. Are there any other last minute questions or comments that people wanted to bring up? I think this has been a really great discussion and just really what we hoped to achieve from this. So, we're so thankful for all of you attending and sharing time to share your knowledge as well. So, any last minute comments, Kanika or Malcolm or anyone?
Just thank you for everyone being so talkative, and this was great. This is great.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I appreciate the engagement, all the insights and details shared.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone. Have a lovely evening, and we will talk to you all soon or see you at our next meeting in a month or so.
Thanks, Kylie.
All right.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.